Good morning, everybody. First of all, I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank our great opening keynote speaker who kind of got our heads in the game, really talking about mission and then how you're going to leverage virtualization and collaboration. And I think, focusing on the mission is really a key part of this discussion. Before we bring our panelists up here and make them sit in these really uncomfortable chairs, I thought I'd do a little bit of framing. I know some people may be like me and have a technical clue but not be technically deep. And so I thought that I would discuss along with all of you a story of my awakening regarding virtualization about a year ago. I had the honor of speaking at a conference out in Sausalito that was run by a large equity company. I was at that time before I started my own company, and there were 45 CEOs from billion-dollar companies or above, and their CIOs and their CTOs. And the discussion, one of the discussions that came up was that a lot of companies that were spinning off from larger companies, okay, so $20 billion companies they spin off, they had a moment in time to decide what they were going to do regarding all of their business support services. So how are they going to run their IT? How are they going to run their customer management? How are they going to run their finance? How are they going to handle their travel and auditing? How were they going to do all of those functions? Normally, 5 or 10 years ago, you would have said, okay, I got to figure out how I'm going to create these functions, right, within me, or I'm going to hire a consulting company, right, or a services company to provide me that service. And 3 of them told their story that because of cloud-based services and virtualization, they were able, for the first time, to take a completely different tact. And one of those companies told us this story in detail, and they decided to go virtualization like about 90%. So they did a little bit of what Shemendra talked about. They assessed, right, their business needs. They assessed their data, and they decided, okay, these small functions I'm going to keep within the company, but my customer management, I'm going to leverage Salesforce, a cloud-based service that is virtualized on my mobile devices or on my platform. I'm going to leverage SuccessFactors to do my HR. And in other words, they outsourced via virtualization the majority of their functions. They made this transition, and what were the results? 2 years later, they could scale it any way they wanted to, right? When they needed more service, they brought it up. Innovation was coming into them instantaneously because that particular entity was focused only on innovating in that space. If the service wasn't meeting their needs, they fired them and they got someone else. Now, is it a panacea? No, because then they had different risks, right? They had to look at how to integrate those functions. They had to see how these separate virtualized capabilities, how did they need to be integrated and synchronized? So without going into a lot of detail, so the idea is, how do you take the power of that and tailor it to your government agency, entity, or company? And that's what the exciting stuff we're going to get to talk about right now. So thanks to INSA, thanks to WTOP, AT&T, and Juniper Networks for making this happen. And let's bring our panelists up so that they can start talking about these brilliant things. Come on up, panelists. Right now is Mike Kennedy, who is the Deputy Program Manager. I'm sorry.
I don't know if we're actually in order here, but we're going to come up right behind you.
Okay.
Yep.
You can shift. We can be flexible. We can make this work. Mike is the Deputy PM for ISE, working with Shemendra. In 2006, he was the ODNI CIO and has had a career in Intel and IT, and to include the Intel Link PMO, right? Which is one of my favorites. Okay, next we have Doug. Doug McGovern is the CIO and Director of IT at NGA. He previously was the Deputy Director at Innovision and the Director of Acquisition at NGA. He's been there since 2001 and started his career at Navy Sea Systems Command. Hoorah. Okay. Chris Smith, next, is the VP of Technology at AT&T Government Solutions. Previously the CTO and Director of Innovation at Accenture, and started out in Air Force Joint Tactical Communications. Go Air Force. And finally, but not least, is George Holland, and George is the VP of National Security Group, Juniper Networks, focused on high-performance networking, with previous positions at Northrop Grumman, Bell, Sybase, and he started as a Russian linguist, which is special to my heart. So please, gentlemen, have a seat.
Thanks.
And what we're going to do is, with understanding, that what we're talking about is virtualization in a collaboration environment. Each of our panelists is going to have 3 to 4 minutes to kind of frame from their perspective how they think about this space, and also give us some examples of how it works, either with their customers or with their agency or entity. So just to mix things up a little, how about we start with you?
Fine. Is this on?
It should be.
So you're in a fast-moving environment when you've rewritten your opening statements like 3 times based on what everybody else is talking about. The Russian linguist in me really has a big focus on mission and getting the job done and figuring out ways to use virtualization and automation, not to do what a lot of people want, which is to replace people, but really how do you connect people that are really talented? How do you take their insights, their expertise, the content, and to Shemendra's point, how do you set up a system where you can share that information, that expertise, to get the mission done, but do it in a very trustful manner, so people are trusted, they know the information is valuable, but they also know that it's actionable. So I think virtualization and automation, to me, is an opportunity for agencies at the state, local, and federal level to really think through what is their mission, what are they really trying to achieve, and then how can they achieve it through these new technologies. I think it's going to be critical that they work together, that they try not to do a forklift upgrade and try to do everything right from the get-go, but how do we evolve these systems and these networks and these frameworks to become more collaborative, more open but secure, and really enable the talented people that are all 3 levels to work more collaboratively together. So I think this is a huge opportunity. I think it's confusing, but if we work together to get it right, I think that the nation will be much better off.
Okay, thanks.
Well, good morning. It's great to see everybody. Shemendra, a good friend and colleague for many years, and Mike Causey, who's just a legend in the area from his time at the Post and now WTOP. I think both of them did a great job of setting the context. Mike, you talking about what's happening in the Sinai and just the broader destabilization in the Middle East. You look at the resurgence of Russia right now, and their aspirations are rebalance into the Pacific. And if you look at the foundational documents, and what we're here talking about today is information sharing, whether it's the National Military Strategy that General Dempsey put out just a little earlier this year, or the Quadrennial Defense Review, or the document that Shemendra was pointing to. And you also look at companies and organizations and how they're navigating the economy. There's 3 terms that keep coming up. It's innovation, agility, and whether you're in a mission set, and depending on what that mission set is, mission success or economic bottom line. And it's this virtualization aspect of what's happening with that context against the world that I think is so extraordinarily important. Virtualization in the IT business, whether you're sitting in the government side and not-for-profit or industry, we get a little hyperbolic, right? It was so a few years ago. service-oriented architecture, and then it was the cloud, then it was big data, and now we're talking about software-defined networking. The reality is these things build upon themselves and allow us to do more quicker, with better performance, at lower cost, with greater insight, and better security, to tell you the truth. So the promise of cloud, if if we were up here 2 years ago, it was still a bit in the early stages. Let's be honest, it's mainstream. Whether you're doing a private cloud in the intelligence community to share workloads and get that quick time to compute, it really is close to a utility where you plug in and you can put whatever you want to on top of that hardware and get to mission functionality extraordinarily quickly. Just a few years ago, it took us 3 months to rack and stack gear and then put the software on top of it and then have functionality maybe in the 6 to 9 month range. And it cost around $18,000 to do that one server. Now we're talking sub $3,000 a year for a virtual machine, and that price keeps going down. A gigabyte of information just a few short years ago was over $1 and some odd a gigabyte. Now it's down below 7 cents, right? So we got this quick, fast time to market to deliver better mission functionality for actionable intelligence, to work better on the battlefield, to fight forest fires better. You name it, we can do things much more quickly. And so from my perspective, looking at a large global platform with more than 1 million miles of fiber out there, we serve nearly 99% of this country between our wired and wireless networks. The network is now going to be virtualized. So think about the promise that's been delivered in storage and cloud that I just talked about. That's coming in the network. Heretofore, if you wanted to do all that commodity compute and storage in the data center, or multiple data centers, you had to engineer up to the highest kind of need that you had out there, right? You had to have the pipe big enough to take that surge. Well, what software-defined networking is delivering today is the ability to take your bandwidth and have it go up and down, and have your pipes go up and down as your storage and compute needs go up and down. It means we can move networks on the fly to get away from denial of service activities, or we can shunt adversaries off to environments that they don't know really aren't production. So the promise of virtualization ultimately, I think, is the third part of the stool, from the cloud compute to the storage to now the network, is going to allow us not to look for needles and haystacks, but to use haystacks to find the needles now, because we've got that information, we compute, and we can move that information all the way to the edge to devices that compute very quickly. You can have situational awareness in those mission areas I just talked about in a better and quicker manner, more cost effectively and securely. So I'm excited for the conversation.
I don't think you like this subject at all.
I love it.
Okay, Doug.
So I'm very bullish about virtualization, and thanks to most of you in this room, we at NGA operate on a very high-performance, mostly virtualized infrastructure today. But as we move forward, as the technology has advanced and presented new opportunities, I wanted to say a few words about our priorities from a community and an agency perspective, and talk about some of the challenges that our leadership team has put upon us that make this just a very exciting time in our lives. So from the community perspective, the push is about eyesight, right? And so most of you have heard that, but it's really a game-changing way we think about how we do our business to truly achieve the intelligence integration that Jim Clapper has been seeking for quite some time now. It is driving that, and we are at the community level, we are making great progress in that. We've got the commercial cloud sponsored by CIA, the Gov Cloud sponsored by NSA. We've got the common desktop, DTE, which is co-sponsored by NGA and DIA. We delivered, we'll hit 50,000 desktops delivered this year from a DTE perspective. And what that presents the opportunity is a great integration of getting everybody on a common platform. From an IA perspective, it helps to limit our attack vector. It helps us get to common processes, business processes and controls to support interoperability and information sharing. It's a tremendous enabler. Our quest right now is to really make sure that all the agencies are in to eyesight such that there's no backing out. There's no going back to the old ways of doing business. And so from an NGA perspective, we've recently put out the marker that we will be all in on eyesight, all into the cloud within 2 years. We were on a path to do that notionally around a 4-year time frame, and that was based on how we normally do program builds, program planning, budgets, and the like. But we put the marker at saying, let's do it in 2 years. Let's get it done. Some people say, why wait 2 years? Why can't we do it faster? And as people are getting into understanding what the opportunities are to get into the modern cloud environment, they are really getting excited about how fast it enables them to work. So getting to a true DevOps mindset where we can sling a little code, get it into operations, not within years, but within minutes. And have that fully integrated with our security controls such that we're confident from a CIO and an IA perspective it's going to work. That is going to help enable us at NGA push on some of the priorities that we're trying to bring to the community. And that is in the area of activity-based intelligence, where we want to advance the state of our tradecraft from a GeoInt perspective to stop looking at static pictures, but understand activities and behaviors and models of how our adversaries operate. It's going to support our delivery of GeoInt services to the community, so core geospatial and GeoInt services that we will put on the network for everybody in the community to consume. And also our ability to better manage our workforce. So it's not just about the mission systems we're putting out there, but it's the business systems behind it. So our HR capabilities, our financial systems as well. So we are all into that. And the next part of that challenge is understanding from a geospatial intelligence perspective, our business is not locked up on the top secret networks. The technologies and the data and the tradecraft that's being developed out in the public each and every day just presents tremendous potential for us to take advantage of new data sets and new ways of doing business and new technologies that we aren't necessarily driving the development of. So as Robert Cardillo has pushed us out into the open to take advantage of that space, we are looking to do things in a common framework across the different security network considerations. So World Wide Web, NIPR, secret environments, and the top secret environments. And again, as we move forward, we're trying to do all this in a very dynamic information assurance, cyber environment where it's a very exciting time to try not to be hacked or assuming that you haven't been hacked already. And doing that in a time of reduced budgets. Sequestration, it may be gone for now, but the budgets have not necessarily come back from what that pretended. Dealing with PII and personal information and some of the unique challenges that presents to us in this day. And the technology just keeps on racing on. So I get very excited about the opportunities for software-defined networks, software-defined computers that you can build and tear down as fast as you want. You only pay for them when they're spooled up. And boy, if we can keep moving, it keeps us 1 or 2 or 3 steps ahead of our adversaries.
So NGA all in.
All in.
Okay.